let's take a very close look at Zodiac. Hello, my name is Chubbo and I run Plus4 World. Zodiac is one of the earliest Commodore 16 games. It's from 1985. It was written by Robert Henderson, who also wrote Dark Tower and later Video Poker. He has some credits on other systems too, but we don't know much about him. So first, I'll go over the gameplay in detail. There's a simple title screen where we can select our character's run speed ranging from 1 to 4, with 1 being the fastest and 4 being the slowest. We press fire and then we're off. We find ourselves in a corridor. Moving either way, we see some enemies that we can shoot. Touching an enemy or the walls of the maze causes the player to lose one of the initial 5 lives. Occasionally, we find cyan-colored zodiac signs in the middle of rooms. We must collect 12 of these. Unfortunately, the game doesn't show which ones have been collected. The signs themselves are distributed randomly in the maze, and there are many duplicates. Once the 12 signs are found, the game has a second phase. We're taken to a different room with no exits, and it has 5 unkillable enemies. We have to pick up each of the 12 signs again and place them in the middle of the room. In this phase of the game, we basically bait the monsters to follow us into a corner and quickly run around them. Once all 12 signs are placed in the middle, then the game is won, quote unquote. But there's absolutely no indication of this. We're simply placed back to the first room, and we can start all over if we finish. So interestingly, this game is currently listed as a "this game has an ending" type game on Plus4 World, and the second phase is shown to be the ending, quote unquote. I would disagree with this. I would simply call the room with no exits a second phase, and once that phase ends, that's the true ending, but that there isn't even a measly congratulations. So let's take a look at some technical details. There's an interesting tidbit mentioned on the cover that says the game has nearly 400 screens. It's the nearly part that's odd. A couple of days ago I created a map for the game, which can be seen here. The map is 20 by 20 rooms, which technically means there are 400 screens. However, many of them cannot be reached during normal gameplay. These are basically dead areas. If you wondered how the author could squeeze in this many rooms into the Commodore 16's memory, here's an explanation. Each room is only described by a single byte, or more precisely a nibble, which is half of a byte. So there are only 16 types of rooms that can be seen here, and the entire map is built from these. The code. So looking at the code, there are a couple of interesting things. First, it's very cleanly written. The author must have used a high-level compiler or at a minimum a very good assembler. All of the game variables are in one chunk, which is followed by the game data, and then followed by the code, and finally followed by separate code for the sounds. To me, that looked like they reused some existing code or library for sound generation. So second, this also leads to many things that appear oddly coded. One example is in the beginning of the game, there's a loop which runs 3 times. And in each iteration, it turns off one of the TED channels. So it achieves this by reading the current value of the TED sound register, which is FF11. And it ends at that value. It performs an AND operation with that value, which it looks up from a separate table, and then it puts it back to FF11. So this is a ton of code, and it's essentially just equals to LDA0 and STFF11, which what it would mean is we take a 0 and write it into that register. So another odd thing is the use of color. The game actually reads all colors from the ROM color table. Even though we have 8 shades of all the colors, the game only uses the default ones. So this is another missed opportunity. The game could have been a lot more colorful. Okay, third, the game's code ends around 3200 in hexadecimal, so that leaves about 3.5 kilobytes of free memory, which could have been used for any number of things to improve the game. And then fourth, even though there's all this extra room after the game's code and data, which is not used for anything, a small chunk of the game's code is copied to the lower memory to hexadecimal 200, so that's just above the stack. So that code only comes up later in the game when the player receives this cubic gate opening bonus, which grants the player an extra life. So because of this, several cracks of the game crash at that point. The game appears to start and run normally on first blush, so the crackers and also the Italian bootleggers very likely assumed that their crack of the game was fine, because they never actually got to that bonus part. So we can only speculate why this was done, but I would guess that this is a form of copy protection. Now, my opinions on the gameplay. So this is the type of game that once you've seen the first couple of screens, you've seen the entire game. Nothing changes after that. The fact that you can't clear out a room for good gets annoying very quickly. Not showing which signs have been collected is also a missed opportunity. The scoring is pretty bad, since a player can basically just move between a screen back and forth and keep shooting monsters, which racks up the points indefinitely, but this becomes like pointless and boring very quickly. The use of color, I mentioned that before, is odd. The game only uses the default color table instead of the many available different shades. Also, the walls of the maze are actually randomly colored, which is another odd choice, so choosing them differently could have helped with the navigation. The size of the game map is one of the best examples of bigger isn't always better. I don't think it's fun to have that many rooms, especially since the monsters block quick navigation and they are all basically the same. Overall, this is not a very good game. But wait, there's more. So after all that, you'll probably be surprised that a deluxe version is coming. Rüdiger asked me to make the map, which prompted me to take a look at the code, which then prompted me to mention this to Kichi. And once he made a mock-up for a visually updated version, I decided that, okay, we'll just do it. And we'll make a deluxe version of it. So plans are some obvious graphical updates, new music, some quality of life improvements like showing which Zodiac signs have been collected. But more importantly, I think I'll make some gameplay changes that will hopefully make it more fun to play. So one thing is, I'll reduce the map to 12 by 12 rooms. Why 12? Well, because there are 12 Zodiac signs. So that will be a total of 144 screens. I also want to make the final room to be actually part of the map, not like a separate location that you get teleported to. And then one idea that I'm playing around with or thinking about is that once a room is cleared, it stays like that. So this would also help with the scoring, because it would mean that there's a theoretical maximum that can be achieved by clearing out the entire map. And the only way to score higher than that after that would be keep playing more rounds. I want to add a small actual ending, which would at a minimum just be at least like a congratulations message. So this is where you come in. If you have any ideas about how we could improve this game without completely rewriting it, let me know. I would be very interested in hearing it. And also, I'll probably need testers to test the deluxe version so that we don't end up with any problems or bugs. So if you're up for it, let me know on +4World.